Hi everybody, welcome to All Games New and Old. I'm David Rodriguez, and today I'm going to be talking about the Seals of Cthulhu that was provided to us from Thing 12 Games. The designer of this is Sean Epperson, and this was published in 2020. Now this game has the whole Cthulhu mythos, cultists, that sort of thing going on in the background. So in order to talk about the theme, I decided to, once again, reach out to our local cultist, Malefor Darkstar, the harbinger of the corrupted one. Take it away, Malefor.
I'm so happy I could be here for you, David, but I've been promoted. So I'd appreciate if you address me by the proper name.
Oh, well, congratulations. I didn't know about that. That's great, I suppose. So what can you tell us about the game?
Yes, well, unfortunately, see, I wasn't able to get into your game. As you can see by the cover, it has a magical lock on the front. I've tried putting every key I can into this keyhole, but it will not open. The contents of this game box are like the great old ones themselves, completely unknowable, my man.
Malefor, you just take it and you do that. See, it's easy, and then it just, just opens like so. Looks like an empty notebook. You gotta watch out for that though. but that's it. There's no secret to it.
Your power must be so vast. You must be the chosen one.
I assure you, I'm not.
Please, come to our next meeting.
I appreciate it, but I really think I'm gonna have to take a pass on that one.
It'll be fun. I assure you, we'll have homemade cookies, deviled eggs, and I'll be bringing my personal specialty, stuffed meatballs. You see, I take a big meatball, but I put a small meatball in the middle of it. It's ingenious.
So wouldn't that just be one big meatball?
No, you're not listening. There is a smaller meatball in the middle of the bigger meatball. It's a stuffed meatball. It's incredible.
I mean, I get what you're saying, but if you cut it in half straight through, it's just a meat. All right, I'm getting really sidetracked. You know what? I'll tell you about the theme of this particular game. This is a 2-player game, and in it, you're going to pick the side of either investigators or cultists, and you're going to be trying to get control of these ancient artifacts that could bring about the world's destruction or possibly save it, depending on what side you're on. You're going to be doing all sorts of bidding to get the pieces you need, and some of those pieces, when combined, are going to give you special powers that'll give you a better chance of saving the day or ruining everything. So let me take you to the gameplay overview of this, and you can see exactly how this works, and then we'll come back and we'll give you our final thoughts. Alright, so here I have most everything out that you'll have to play. There is a hand of cards that would go to the investigator player, and a hand of cards that would go to the cultist player. You can tell they're different because of the color. One thing you might notice is that the cards in each are named the same, and each one has half of a picture. So what you're ideally trying to do is get a hold of the card from the other side that matches a card that you have in play. Now, what you also do when you start is you add one of 7 great old ones to your hand. So in this case, I'm going to pick Shoggoth, but there's several others, and they all have different powers that can affect the game. You have these meeples here, which are they basically count as your influence. So it's almost like a currency in a way. And then another thing that you can do, although I'm not going to do it for this particular overview, is you can actually pick a specific character. So there's, I believe, 4 for each. So there's 4 cultist characters, and then of course there's 4 investigator characters as well. And those are going to give you a special ability that you can use once per game, and also gives you a little idea of what the characters are, which is kind of neat. I like to know the background of the characters I'm playing. So right now I'm just going to show you what I might be doing if I had the investigator hand of cards. Now, basically every turn you're going to be playing a card down, and then you and your opponent are going to be bidding on it, and every player is going to have 5 turns. And at the end of that time, each of you will have 1 card left, and at that point it'll be time to add up your score. So let me show you how you get there though. So let's say it's my turn and I'm starting out. I have the active player token, which is what that is. I'm going to look through my cards and I'm going to try to decide which one I want to put out to be bid on. Now, these are in my hand, but I don't have any special abilities from them just from them being in my hand. They have to be played and they have to be face up. So each one has a couple important numbers on it. There is the control number. So in this case, he is -3. So he's actually a minus to your score. And then there's also an influence, in which case this is also 3. So that in future rounds, if I have this one played out to the table, I can actually use that to bid on items where usually I would just use the meeples. So I would look at my cards. I would decide which one I wanted to put out, and then I would play it face down. Let's say I wanted to put the potion out, so I'd put that face down, and then, unless I intended to just give my opponent that card, I would probably bid a certain number of influence on it. We'll just say I'm going to do 1 influence for now. That's what I want to pay to get that card. If I do get it, then it flips over onto my play area, and I have that in play. Now my opponent then, they could bid on it as well if they like. They have to put a bid that is higher than what I have put out there by at least 1, so maybe they'll put 2 influence out. Now it could go back to me. I could then again choose to bid more if I liked, or I could just accept the bid. So I could take his influence, add it to mine, and then my opponent would take this card and they would put it face up in their area. And so now they would be able to utilize the power down here. Now this one is not a card where the picture's cut in half, so they could actually use this one on its own. Most of them you need both pieces in order to actually get the power from it. Now, as you play, there's various things that might cause cards to flip over, in which case they're not something that you can get the benefit from anymore, either by power or by the score at the end of the game. So, but there's also cards that will let you flip them back. So you have to really kind of watch out for that and make sure that you can have the cards in play that you want. And when you get down to just having 5 cards, or excuse me, when you get down to just having 1 card in your hand, so you have one that you haven't played, you'll have a variety of ones out that you have. I'll go ahead and say that I've, gotten that one combined, and maybe I've gotten this one from my opponent too. You probably have more than this, but this is what it might be like at the end for you. So both people are down, they'll have 1 card in their hand, so at this point you're going to add up your control and see who has the highest score. So this one is worth 5, that one's 1, so that makes 6. This is -3, which would bring it down to 3, and that one's -3 as well, which would bring it down to 0. So not a very high score, but, if my opponent did worse somehow, I don't think they could in this particular instance, but if they did, then I would win. Whoever ends up with the most control at the end wins. And it's really just as simple as that. You're really just bidding on these cards, trying to utilize the powers that they give you, or get the pairs needed to get those powers, and trying to get the most control at the end of the game. And that's the basics of how this game is played. Like I said, there are a variety of factors. The great old ones that you switch out can definitely be different. They'll have different abilities, be worth different points, etc. The investigators or cultists, if you pick one of them as your character, that's going to have an effect on the game too. So those are ways to kind of change it up and make it a little more variable, a little different each time. But other than that, that's the basic gist of how the game goes. So let me take you to our final thoughts. Okay, I hope that gameplay overview was helpful for you. Hope you have a better idea of how the game is played. So we're going to talk about our final thoughts on the game now. So we're going to start out with art.
I really enjoyed the art. We actually met with the designer and he talked to us about the art, and he used an artist that purposely didn't know Lovecraft, and so he just gave him general, not a description, but just read the concept of the different mythos, creatures, and stuff. And so the guy did the artwork just without knowing what Cthulhu looked like, and just went off of kind of what the Lovecraft description is. And so I thought that was really kind of cool and a clever way of doing the artwork, so he wasn't influenced by other artwork that's already out there.
Yeah, I thought that was neat too, especially with this kind of thing where the characters are supposed to be these almost indescribable monsters that, drive you insane possibly if you even look at them. I mean, you can't just have this very specific set way they're supposed to look. I don't think so. I think that was a smart way of doing that. I think the style, okay, you'll have to forgive me because I am not any kind of art expert whatsoever, so I'm sure there's better ways to describe the style than what I'm about to do. It almost has a sort of, like a sketchy kind of quality, but that sounds kind of negative, and I don't mean it that way. It's just not like the super, like, precise line kind of art, and I think in some things I wouldn't like that, but I think for this game with this theme, I really like it. You know, even the investigator cards who are regular people, you know, they look have kind of like a neat sort of edgy look to them, and the cultist guys are just bonkers looking. So I mean, I think they're neat.
It kind of helps it make the game feel a little bit more old timey, which is typically what the Cthulhu theme it is. So I think that kind of helps with the theme.
Definitely. So going on to components, you know, the cards are really cool. A tarot-like card. You know, they've got like the tarot, like Roman numerals and whatnot, and just really nice quality. The meeples are pretty cool too. You know, they're a little different than your very typical basic meeple, but they've got neat little symbols printed on them, which is pretty nice. They certainly didn't have to do that. The first player token has cool art, and it's, you know, very good quality, but I think the shining star of all this is the packaging, which is sort of weird. Usually that's not a thing that matters that much, but I think it does in this case. You know, it's got the look of sort of an ancient, weathered book, and if you read a lot of Cthulhu Mythos stuff, it seems like there's always some big horrible book that, you know, has driven half the people Reddit mad or what have you. I like that they have this, you know, chain on here that, you know, it's like, oh gosh, we really shouldn't go into this thing, but, you know, you slide that off. Then it has a cool magnetic clasp thing, and then on the inside, it's got this area here that looks like people have signed it out of like a library. That's another. There's a like secret area of the library that has like the ancient tomes that very few people are allowed to see. Whatever. These are just common tropes in the Cthulhu Mythos, but I love it. This part, it's usually on the back, and I just popped it in the box last time I closed it, but this is the back of it, and I think some people maybe wouldn't like that they're not seeing the gameplay on the back, but I actually really like this, that it looks sort of like, you know, you got Polaroids of some creatures and gates and just, you know, torn notes. I think that's a really nice touch. The other side, if you like it better, is you know, looks like a file envelope for the Project Wickerweld, so that's really neat. It has a little thing when you first open it that looks like it's on notebook paper that says, you know, before you do anything else, read this, and it has some neat sort of story stuff on the back to get you into the mindset. The instruction manuals also has that Project Wickerweld thing, and you know, it just looks like a little file that you need to read to be up to date on what's going on. There's a cool little bag that comes in here, which is higher quality than some of the ones that I see. A lot of times I dig things out of a bag and little threads come out, and that wasn't the case in this one. I mean, you don't have to pull things out of here very much. I just pretty much store the cards in here, and then the only thing I grab out is the cards, but it's a really nice quality for that. And it has a few other cool little things in here as well. It's got this little index card that has some, you know, interesting little notes on there. And let's see, I'll get this guy open here. So there's even like a newspaper clipping, which is kind of interesting. I mean, all these things that you definitely don't need for the game by any stretch, but they do add to the feel of it. It makes you kind of feel like, okay, I'm actually an investigator doing this, or maybe I'm a cultist that took this file and now I'm looking at whatever, you know, whichever way you want to look at it. It's pretty cool. I had done an unboxing video of this, and, you know, taken off all the shrink wrap and, you know, of all the cards and the box itself, all that stuff. And then I realized I didn't have my microphone on, which is not cool. So that video will never be seen, unfortunately. But, you know, usually I show people if there's any kind of hidden card or anything underneath the insert, and I just couldn't do it this time, so we'll never know. No one will ever know. It's sad.
Yeah. I think they did a fantastic job with the components. They went way beyond what they needed to do for a game. Like, the cards are well done, the tokens, the meeples, even the first player token, I don't know if you'll be able to see or not. But I think it's really clever the way they did it. Like, some people see a monster like Cthulhu. Some people just see the tentacles. Which one do you see? The box is fantastic. All the extra little details that they went into putting into the design of this game, I think is just really well done and beyond what they really needed to do for a game.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they really went all out. I mean, this is the kind of thing that I would expect to be, if this was on Kickstarter, like way down the line in terms of like stretch goals that you might get, something they do to just make it a little fancier, but it is just how the game comes, and I think that's pretty cool. And maybe I'll even get this sleeve on here again. Maybe. Okay, there we go. So, what about theme then?
The theme, I enjoyed the Cthulhu Mystos theme. I think this game, like, it fits with the theme very well. The components, like the box and stuff like that, really fit in with the theme. The theme with the gameplay, I think the gameplay could have kind of been skinned with any kind of theme. So, but the components really tie in the theme very well.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think if they hadn't been so fancy with the box, if they were just like, hey, it's a Cthulhu game, and had just like a picture of Cthulhu on the box, and you open it, and there's your cards, and that's all there is. Yeah, I mean, it would still have cool pictures on it, but I guess I wouldn't feel as connected to the theme that it is tied to. As it is, the gameplay itself, it could be almost anything, but I think that honestly, it's so weird because it's usually not such a big deal, the packaging, but I think the whole packaging and getting into this game kind of helps put you in the right mindset for this being a Cthulhu game. But yeah, as far as the gameplay itself, it's not so much wrapped up in that. So I guess we should talk about the gameplay. The gameplay in this, it's different than a lot of games that we typically play, I think. I don't play a lot of games with a bluffing element at all. And that is part of this here. I just didn't grow up playing poker or any card games. I mean, I have a weird aversion to card games. It's strange. Not these kind of cards, like the traditional playing cards. So that's very different to me. I haven't played too many games that are just so purely based on bidding. I mean, every turn, that's the first thing you do is you're going to bid. So, but I mean, I think everything works well. I think it is kind of interesting to like put out things and be like, okay, well, I hope my opponent thinks that I really want this card, even though, maybe I do, maybe I don't, because so that way they'll, you're trying to get them to like react in certain ways a lot of the time, and that's kind of interesting to do. But it is different than other things I've played for sure. But yeah, like I said, everything's functional. I think it's pretty well balanced in general. Like every card is kind of, if it's high on influence, it's not as high on the
Control.
Control, thank you. Yes, I was blanking on that.
And it's also swapped. So if you're a cultist, your number 5 card, your like 5 control and 1 influence is the investigator's 1 control and 5 influence. So it kind of balances it out that way, so that you're not trying to just collect the same, like, you want to match up cards, but then it also balances that out by when you're matching them up.
Yeah, definitely. I think that there's a lot of potential variety to the game between the great old ones that you can incorporate into the game, and then more so even than them is the investigator. Because honestly, if you didn't feel like messing with the great old ones, you could just choose not to ever put that card out if you didn't want to, because some of them are a little trickier to use, I think. But the characters, I think, really can add a lot of variety to how the game is played, and when you're both going towards, you're trying to accomplish things that are not specific to the very basic game, it's going to make the interaction between the two players, I think, be a little different each time.
So, for the gameplay, I enjoy the game. There's a lot of small things here and there that make the game a little bit not as enjoyable as I would like. Part of it is because you only have, I think it's 5 rounds. A lot of the bonuses that you get for collecting both cards, you can't really do. And a lot of them, it kind of seems like you have to to really be able to utilize them, you have to be able to get a couple of them off. And so that seems very difficult to do when you only have 5 rounds to accomplish things. A lot of games that we play, especially if it is a competitive game, if my opponent does something to me, I normally have some way of kind of reducing the damage that it does to me. And this game doesn't really have that element. Like, especially if you're the first player, the player that takes the last round, they can do something to you that completely changes everything that you just accomplished. Which, it's a short game, so that's, probably won't bother some people, but for me that was something that I didn't really like.
Yeah, that was, we played one game, and I may be kind of flipping this rule because I'm just going off of memory now, where it's like if I had the 2 halves of this one thing, if I flip one over, I could then flip over any other card, and when it's flipped over so it's face down, you don't score it anymore. So I had the very last turn of the game, and I flipped that over, and then I flipped over her highest point card, which, dramatically impacted her score. And it's a totally viable tactic. I mean, it's what you would do in this game. But at the same time, maybe I'm just not a mean enough person, but I felt bad. I was like, I'm sorry, but like I kind of have to do this because it's just, why would I not do this? So yeah, I think, if there was some kind of weird, like, I don't know, retaliation's not right, but a way that you could sort of like answer back when someone does something like that to you in some way without, even on the last turn, I don't know. I'm not a game designer. I don't know how that would work, but it just felt like a little bit like super mean at the end. Which,
especially because like I had something that I could have done that I had a matching set out that I could have at least lessened what the effect was on me, but it wasn't I had already taken my turn, so I couldn't do it. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah, I know, and if I had chosen to do that earlier in the game, then she could have maybe done something, because there's cards that'll flip things back, but then why would I not hold off until the last possible time? Anyway, so yeah, there's definitely some, at least, I don't think it crops up in every game, but there's some potential for some serious mean things that you could do that might be a little off-putting, I think, to some people. But.
Yeah. So, our scores for this game. For me, I'm going to give it a 6. I do enjoy the game, but because of all those little minor things, it just kind of keeps knocking it down just a little bit each time that we kind of play it. I'm like, I wish there was more turns, or I wish that there's just small things here and there that just kind of make it so that I wouldn't score it that much higher. I do think that you almost have to play with the characters. Playing without the characters really I didn't enjoy the game when we were playing without the characters. So.
Yeah, I completely agree, especially on that last point. I think the first time we played it, which was a while back now, we did play with the characters, but I think I had no concept of how to make this game, like, to be strategic in it whatsoever. And since it's been a while, we went back and we played just without characters, just so we could get the basic gist down. And that's... it was okay. It was alright. At that point, I was actually probably at a 6-2. Like, I would play it. I think it's a well enough put together game that it's definitely better than average, and I think some people would still really like it, but it just was not for me at all at that level. So, but with the characters, it's strange because I think adding in this, a lot of times you'll have another kind of goal you're trying to meet or trick you're trying to pull off that can really alter how you're thinking about the game, and that really adds a ton to it. I don't think I would ever play without the characters unless I was playing with someone who was like very new to gaming and they needed to get that basic flow down, or maybe if someone had just bought the game and they wanted my opinion, I'd say maybe try it once without the characters so you understand how the game works, but then after that always use the characters, just because I think it adds so much to the game, and I feel like without them, it almost feels like you're almost doing random stuff a little bit. Like, you just don't have a lot of direction, and you don't know what's going to be helpful to you until, like, midway through the game. And again, 5 turns for each player. That's not a lot of game.
Without the characters, like, you both have the same goal, and so when you're both trying to get the same goal, it's a little bit too much just back and forth, and it's a little bit more a matter of luck.
Yeah. And, I think it was kind of weird, a weird one for me, because I sort of wanted the game to be longer, because I could see all these, on my cards, I got all these cool abilities that I might be able to pull off, but like she was saying, I think it's really hard without a hefty dose of luck, or maybe you're just really able to read your opponent super well, that you're ever going to pull off most of them. You might get one or two things off a game, at least that we've experienced. I'm sure there's people out there who've played it who, pulled off like everything possible for them. That's great. But I don't know. At least it's not clicking with my head enough that I could figure out how I would begin to do that. So it's like, I wish it could somehow be longer. Obviously, it really couldn't without changing fundamentally how the game works out. But I see all these neat powers, and I'm like, I'm not going to be able to really use them, and I can't necessarily plan to use them unless I'm just lucky, with the exception of those character powers. A lot of those I think you can more directly work towards, and I think that's why I like that, is because the other stuff, it's like you kind of have to see what you're gonna get and hope it works out in some way. But the character powers, you're like, I am trying to accomplish this for sure. And sometimes it doesn't even have that much to do with what's in the cards in your hand. Like I had one where if I had a certain number of my opponents influence meatballs, that would give me a number of extra points depending on how many I had. And that was really cool because I was trying to make her bid on things with those meatballs, and she never would because she's so difficult. But anyway, in a good way, difficult, honey. But yeah, no, the characters change everything, in my opinion. This game is still outside of my wheelhouse. I'm still not big into bluffing, at least when it's just a matter of like playing down a card and being like, like, yeah, you don't know what I put down. Like if it's a matter of straight up lying, I feel like I could probably do that better. In a game sense, I have never told a lie outside of games. Mm-hmm. So, not to you. Anyway, so now I don't even know where I was. Okay, so yeah, outside of my wheelhouse. The bluffing thing, that's a word for me. Bidding when it is so much of what the game is, that's a little outside of my wheelhouse too. So I gave it a 7. I think there are definitely people out there who will think it's much higher if they're really into those sorts of gameplay elements. It's just real different for me. It's not something that I specifically gravitate towards, but I think the way they've done it is really well done. I think it's a well put together game. That's why I want to make sure people understand that if those things sound great to you, you'll probably give this a higher score. It's just for me, it's not going to be the first one I go to. It's not going to be one I ever mind playing either. So it's just right there in that 7 range. So any other thoughts?
No.
Yeah, me neither. All right, I'm not going to think for the rest of the day if I can help it. All right, so that's it for this particular video. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit like and subscribe and click the little bell icon so you can know when I post another video. And other than that, I look forward to seeing you all around the table again next time at All Games New and Old. Bye.
Bye.
We'll have homemade cookies and deviled eggs, and I'll bring. All right. God damn. Really?
So you're offering all why every time I have a tongue twisting moment in these videos? Shall we?
Scores.
You say things. You speak. me quiet. All right. I hope that gameplay overview is worth. Long day, folks. All right. Manager, roll dice, boom, bloopers. That's how the show goes.
Really?
I tell an little show.
I watched it, so.
This is vodka.